Have you been told that you're just not acting your age? Have you been told that you need to grow up? Suggested that you're not mature? What does that mean? Today we're going to talk about
maturity.
Hi, and welcome to WizNugs. And today, as I just mentioned, we're going to talk about maturity and what does that mean? A lot of times in our life, we are told that we have to act a particular way or give up particular things in order to be an adult, to be that responsible, mature adult. But again, what does that really mean? And why do people give their examples of what they think maturity means when it really is subjective? So in this particular case, if somebody says, hey, you know what? I see that you're still doing the things you used to do when you're a teenager. When are you going to stop doing those things?
As if maturity in and of itself is giving up all of the things that bring you joy as a human being. And you're supposed to now find joy in new things that are different things.
And then in that idea is like, so what does that mean? That means I have to stop doing X habit and now pick up what is socially considered to be the right habit or the adult habit or the mature habit? I think there's fault in that idea.
Well, for example, if you're playing video games as a kid and you enjoy video games and a new Zelda game comes out and you want to play it because I loved Zelda when I was a kid. The nostalgia factor is big. I want to play that. I want to feel the way I did when I was a kid. Happy and secure and safe and comfortable. We're all looking for those things, right?
Right. And so what's necessarily immature about that, right? So if we want to break it down to what we consider to be immature or childish, let's talk about the actual things that we actually can measure and observe and is observable to say what differentiates somebody who's being a child or has childish ways to somebody who's being an adult or mature or considering to be, responsible as a particular example. So as a child, I think of like, I obtain happiness immediately and from somebody else, right? I need somebody else to provide my needs and satisfy my wants. And I'm going to make sure that I'm going to cry and whine like a child would until I get my way.
Right. And you look at the situation of how do you know when someone is an adult? When they no longer cry and whine and complain for other people to give them their way? Is that the key?
Or is it like an age thing? Do I have to have a certain metric in order to say, well, because I am now 18 years old, I am now officially an adult?
The United States government says, because I turned 18, because the calendar has ticked over one more time, that I can now buy cigarettes and smoke them. I can go into clubs have this policy that now I'm allowed in and I can dance. Still can't buy alcohol, but I can go in and dance. You can make contracts. You can get married. There's a whole world opens up to you when you're 18.
Yeah, join the military and you can do all the things that you couldn't do as a child or you needed your parents to be able to have your parents' permission in order to do those things. But now you're legally an adult.
And a lot of areas have labor laws that before you're 18, you can only work a certain number of hours. After you're 18, that magical day, you're suddenly able, you're mature enough and your body magically changes overnight between 17 and almost 18, and that day you turn 18, and now it's completely different. Not to mention sexual activity and things like that it's now all legal. Go ahead, do your thing. But the day before, well, that's illegal in a lot of places. I don't think that a magic, calendar turn changes very much. So is age alone? Or would 21 be better? Because, in the U.S., that's drinking age. So now you can drink and I'll do all those other things.
And isn't behavior also kind of an indicator, right? So if I'm being to myself and playing a video game as the example that was given, and if I'm just by myself playing the video game and doing this thing, is my actions or behavior an indicator of my maturity in that particular case? I don't think so, right? I think if I was to act out and show some type of emotional instability or something of that nature or have unreasonable demands on the people around me that they need to satiate my needs, that's an indicator that, well, maybe you're not quite mature enough. Maybe you need to have some level of realization in there. But I don't think an interest or a hobby in itself is an indicator of maturity.
So what about let's just look at some of these examples. Some hobbies. Let's say we're both men in America.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
If we look at this situation, we say, okay, what are the normal things for men in America? Well, you're supposed to watch sports and drink beer.
Hang out with the guys. Go to clubs.
And I mean, at a certain point, it's like, okay, well, what's the difference then? If I'm sitting around watching sports, a football game can go on for hours and hours. What's the difference meaningfully between watching sports or watching cartoons?
Yeah, none, right?
If I'm sitting on the couch and I'm eating snacks, and maybe even I have a bunch of people over for a watch party because we're watching the debut of our new season of our favorite cartoon show, what's the difference between that and sitting down and watching sports? I don't see a big difference.
I don't see any difference, really, right? It's the perception. It's the mentality towards it. Well, this is what men do. Yeah, but you can also play sports as a child, right? And if you've ever been to a child sporting event, some of the way that people behave would indicate that they're not adults and they're not mature, right?
So age is insufficient.
Right.
But obviously I would say if you're 12 years old, but you're very mature, you're still not quite an adult because there's certain other changes that need to happen in order for you to be considered an adult.
Right. In that sense, right? I mean, there's maturity and then there's adulthood. And I think they do go hand in hand, but you can be mature and not be technically an adult yet. And you can definitely be an adult and still have some maturity issues, right? I think the term is mutually exclusive.
Right.
Right?
The logic term that I remembered was sufficient but not necessary, or necessary but not sufficient.
Okay.
Meaning
as in the qualifier.
Meaning for something to be sufficient, you need that's all that you need. Whereas necessary means, yes, that is a necessary qualifier, but that's not everything. So you're going to need more than just age. You're going to need more than just maturity.
So let's talk about some of the things that we think are actual indicators of maturity. I'll start off and say I think it's being cognizant of your surroundings and knowing where you're at, right? If you know that you're with people that you know, family, friends, and you normally joke and shoot the breeze and you're kind of lackadaisical with them, but you're in an event where you should be somber, say it's a funeral or memorial service or something of nature, well, you're cognizant of the idea that I probably shouldn't behave in that particular way while I'm here. And if you're even if you're at a festive event, right? Let's say you're at a ceremony, somebody's getting married, or a christening, or something of that nature. Well, that's probably not the best idea to start cracking jokes with your buds while you're in the pews or you're in the seats while this event is going on, because that's disruptive and that's not anticipated behavior from you, right? And so being cognizant of that, knowing like, okay, I know that there's an expected behavior here. I would like to shoot the breeze with my friends and joke around and stuff like that. But you know what? I am aware and I know that there's a certain expectation of my behavior, and I will follow those guidelines because I want to make sure that the event goes off without a hitch as much as it can.
Well, and that reminds me of, I think, an offshoot of this behavior modification based on context. Part of that is when you're a kid and you're bored.
Okay.
If you're at a wedding and you'd rather be shooting the breeze with your friends or, whatever your activity of choice is, and you're sitting there and you're just bored, how many times have we seen our kids and other people's kids just, oh, is it over yet? When is it going to be done? I'm bored.
Yeah, so that goes back to the idea of the instant gratification, right? I need to be satiated at all times because I don't know how to handle anything else.
And keeping that behavior to its appropriate context, so that if you're in a situation like a funeral or a wedding or something, crying out, I'm bored.
I didn't even like this person anyway.
It might be true, but it's not the thing that you say there. So I agree. Moderating your behavior based on your surroundings is a sign of maturity and, dare we say, adulthood.
Right. And another indicator I would say is being responsible for yourself, right? And what I mean by that is fiscally as a indicator, right? When you decide that you're going to go move out and you're going to be your own person because you're tired of people telling you what to do, you're tired of the rules, whatever it is, and you go out and now you're paying your own bills, you're taking care of your own needs and wants, and you're being self-sufficient and you're not being a drain on other people, right? That's a level of adulthood and slash maturity, right? And I think there's another point that we talked about earlier that you brought up about it, and that's being able to put off instant gratification in the long run.
Yeah, to delay gratification when there's something that you want, but you know that if you pursue this one thing right now to the cost of other things, that it's not going to work out well in the long run. Sure, I heard it put one time that if you wanted anything bad enough, you could make it happen within, say, 24 hours. Mm-hmm. The idea being, okay, well, what if I wanted to have $1 million? Oh, if you wanted it bad enough, you could make it happen within 24 hours because you could find people to rob or murder or whatever you needed to do to make it happen.
Right.
But we don't do those things in mature society because we've learned that no matter how much I want it, my rights don't infringe on other people's rights. There's freedom from and there's freedom to. And I have freedom from other people stealing my stuff. I don't have the freedom to steal from other people.
And so we talk about that and say, we know now that acting upon impulse is not a sign of maturity, right? I want that bowling ball right now. The guys want me to go bowling with them tonight, and I need a new ball, and my ball is terrible and it sucks. And you know what? I'm just going to go buy it. I know I'm supposed to be paying the rent with this money, but I don't care because I want to be able to be instantly gratified right now with the things that I want. Well, obviously that's an indicator of not being mature, right? Because you're not being responsible. And so, like you said, being able to say, well, I would love to have this new ball. It has all the features and it has the perfect design, it has everything I want to have with it. However, I have responsibilities and I got to make sure that I have a place to live and I got to make sure that the electric is paid and I got to make sure I have food in the refrigerator and I got to make sure the kids are being taken care of. So as much as I would love to have this new ball right now for tomorrow night's game or tonight's game, I'm going to put it off. And hopefully maybe in a month, I'll be able to budget for it and I'll be able to get it. Whatever you need to do in order to make that happen. To me, that's an indicator of maturity.
Right. Saving for the future. It's denying the impulse, delaying the gratification. It's putting it off because you're going to do it right. That's different. Kids don't know how to do that.
Yep. And so one of the other indicators that I would like to bring up is we talked about responsibility, but we talk about responsibility for your own choices, actions, right? That you're culpable for the benefits and or repercussions that you make when making your decisions or actions in your life. As a child, if you do something that's terribly wrong and it gets you into trouble, right? Let's say, for instance, you decide you get a wild hair and you decide I'm going to go outside and I'm going to beat up all my neighbors' mailboxes, right? And you take your baseball bat and you go start knocking them down one by one. And then about to get fifth one or so, you get caught and they bring you in and they're like, oh, we just caught your child doing this. And what are you going to do about it? Well, obviously, as the child, you're going to get punished, whatever that may be, right?
Or not, depending on how mature your parents are.
And it's totally possible. But who is on the hook financially for those actions?
From a legal sense, it's your parents.
It's the parents. And so as a child, it's still someone else's responsibility, especially from a financial point of view, to cover up for your actions and or mistakes. But as an adult, it falls upon you. Now, that doesn't mean as a 20-some-year-old, you still don't go out and do things that might not be scrupulous, for lack of a better word.
Sure, but you live with the consequences.
Sometimes people try to do their best to skirt those consequences. But when you're culpable and you say, well, no, I did this thing and I have to suffer the repercussions of it. It's not something that I wanted, but it is what it is, right? And so to me, that's an indicator when you're willing to be responsible and take responsibility for your actions and or words or whatever the case may be. That's an indicator of maturity. You may not handle it the best, right? There's sure levels of maturity within that. But that's, to me, an indicator that you've gone from being the child and having someone else be responsible for your actions to the adult or the mature adult.
And you can even take it a step further there, where you could say voluntarily take responsibility for people beyond yourself.
Sure. I mean, you could always get arrested for doing something that's...
No. I'm talking about like when you have a family.
Oh, yeah.
You take responsibility for your family. And there's plenty of people who maybe my brain's going a mile a minute. You could take responsibility for your family. I'm also thinking of an experience we just had today at lunch where the employee behind the counter at the sandwich shop,
Yes.
there was a mistake. It wasn't my sandwich. There was a mistake on someone else's sandwich right before me. And they come up and they are saying, well, you forgot my tomatoes and my lettuce. And this person behind the counter, she says, oh, I didn't make that.
Right.
Before she says, but I'll fix it for you.
Right.
And it's this question of, did you need to say that? As a representative of the company, the better customer service choice might be just take responsibility for it. You know that you didn't do it. What does it matter?
Yeah. And is it the whole goal to make sure that your customers are leaving satisfied? All right. I mean, I know that I worked retail for a while. I know that you worked in retail for a bit as well. And, you don't tell the customer like, well, it's not my problem.
It's not my fault. That was Billy. Billy made the mistake.
Yeah, he's the idiot. Why do you want me to do it?
I will fix it for you because I'm awesome. Billy's an idiot. And he's the one that all of your bad feeling needs to go toward him.
Right. Shouldn't the right answer be, I'm so sorry that happened? What do you want me to do to fix it? You want me to just open up the sandwich and put in the lettuce and tomato? Done.
Sometimes we voluntarily take responsibility for others' actions, even if they're not ours.
Right.
And it might be your fellow sandwich shop guy. And it's not about covering for somebody or like, well, he should get fired because he messed up a sandwich. Not my point. But we take responsibility for our family. We take responsibility for our team effort.
Yeah.
And we don't just say, well, that wasn't me. I didn't do that. I'm not the one that screwed up. Well, if your team loses,
You still lose.
you still
right?
Whether you were the one that caused it or not. It happens. You take responsibility as a team and you move forward.
And if you need to have a conversation with that particular person later on and say, hey, when you made this person's particular sandwich earlier, of course, somewhere on the side so no one else can hear you. You forgot to do these particular things. So make sure, when we're making these things, make sure we're asking the customer, what exactly do you want on this? Because you're not going to have the opportunity to add it later normally, right?
That'd be really helpful.
And so the next time that person makes that sandwich, they can say like, oh, this is a different way of making it. I need to ask them up front. And then there's clear and concise directions for that person to move forward. And so there's a level of maturity in that to say, okay, look, first of all, with the customer, I'm not going to point fingers.
Right.
I'm just going to take care of you and make sure that you're satisfied when you leave this establishment. And then there's the second part of the maturity part. It's like, I'm going to also make sure that my fellow teammate also knows going forward, hey, in these cases, in these sandwich types, you need to ask them up front because we make them different in this particular case.
Well, and this even extends further to we've had good bosses and bad bosses.
Right.
And the bad boss is the one who's going to throw you under the bus when something goes wrong. A good boss, I've been surprised sometimes by how good a boss has been, where they've said, I've been sure, absolutely certain that everyone on my team is getting fired because of the way a project went. And then the project goes live and we're like, okay, well, there it is. That's the best we had. And if there's problems, we support them and we fix whatever bugs we can, and we support the launch and we support the product as it's out. And the boss turns around and says, hey guys, great job handling the launch. Let's go back and talk about how we could have, on the next project, we can handle bugs maybe earlier on, maybe fix things up beforehand and communicate and over communicate. But I was absolutely certain going into one of these projects that at the very least, the project manager is going down for this. Like, there's no way. It was a total train wreck from my perspective.
Right.
But from the boss's perspective, it was, you know what? I wasn't following up with this team often enough. I should have been aware of the shortcomings before now.
And isn't that a level of maturity to not only take ownership of something that you may or may not have been involved with, but then also being mature enough to like, you know what? I should have been more involved. I should have been more a part of this and been involved along the way with development, with testing, with, whatever need to be done for this particular project. So that it's a great feeling to know that, hey, I feel like I'm a mature, responsible adult, but so is the other people around me. Isn't that a great feeling?
Right.
So to kind of wrap this up and try to summarize this as best as we can, maturity isn't defined by the things that you like or the way that you want to spend your time. To me, maturity is defined by being responsible for yourself and sometimes for the others around you. Knowing when to behave a particular way and when not to behave a particular way.
I agree. I think maturity extends. It extends into how we treat others. It extends past how we spend our time and the things that we enjoy. I feel like we need another episode sometime on how to fill your own bucket and stop worrying about other people and their things.
Right. I think that's also a very important lesson as well, right? But we will do that in another episode. So we want to say thanks for joining us on WizNugs and have a great day.
Thanks for joining us today on WizNugs. If you liked what you heard, spread the word. For more information, head over to mywiznugs.com.